Good morning. It's an honor and it's a delight to be with you here, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm going to place before you is the story of India's society, and it's a story about India's education system. After having spent about 25 years of extremely challenging and exciting time with one of the best organizations in India, Wipro Limited, I got opportunity to be associated with Azim Premji Foundation right from its inception, right from ideation, and subsequently traveling with the foundation as of today. The foundation was really born out of acute discomfort with the way our society today is, especially in the areas of justice, in the areas of equity, and in the areas of care. Care for both human beings and the environment. And this was a discussion that really happened between me and Mr. Premji. And he was extremely uncomfortable with the way the distribution of wealth was happening in this country. And he wanted to do something solid, something long-term, something that will leave an impact, and something that will create a legacy for this country. So the foundation was born out of a very, very solid belief that education is probably the most non-violent way of fundamentally changing societies. Now, 12 years down the line, extensive travel on my part to nooks and corners of this wonderful country, and personal visit to more than 3,500 schools, I am today standing before you a fairly transformed individual with a lot of enriching experiences. And some of them I am going to really share with you. The whole structure of my presentation to you is essentially placing before you certain experiences, placing before you our analysis arising out of those experiences, and also informing you as to what are the possibilities for our country if we are to really go forward and make India a developed nation. One of my first visits in rural schools in India about 12 years ago was in a school which was a single teacher school, and we still have a lot of single teacher schools in this country. When the teacher doesn't come, nothing happens in the school. So we were in this school and we asked children, where is the teacher? Because we couldn't find the teacher. They said he has gone for a haircut. So we said, okay, we'll wait. He will finish in 10-15 minutes. And so we started interacting with the children. After about 10 minutes, the children informed us that he has not gone to have a haircut. He has gone to give a haircut. Incidentally, he was running a saloon in that small village, and his style was to come to the school, give some work to the students, and vanish for doing what he wanted to do. Now, we later on learned the whole difficulty of managing this entire large education system in this country, wherein today almost 98% of the villages have a school within 1 kilometer. Next experience. I was in a unit which is a preschool in an urban area, and it's wonderful to interact with these children. They are in the age of 2.5 to 5, and we are asking children what do they like about the school, what do they like about their parents, what do they like about the environment in general. And one of the girls, who was just about 4.5 years old, she said she did not like her grandmom telling her bedtime stories. So we were really wondering, why on earth would children not like being told stories? And she mentioned, we started probing. Children are difficult to really probe. But she was very articulate. She said, invariably, when my grandmother is telling stories, I sleep. As the story ends, my grandmother wakes me up and asks me, what is the moral of the story? Now, it struck me the complete disconnect that the adults have from the children. And there are a lot of myths that actually we believe as adults. We believe that children listen to the stories to understand the moral of the story. We believe children go to the school to learn. We believe employees come to the work for working. Now, these are all myths that we have been actually believing, whereas all these people go to those places for different reasons other than what we believe. Next, we were doing a certain survey on the differences between the urban schools, especially the urban private schools, and the rural government schools. What is the profile of the children? So we're asking them a lot of questions in the 4th and 5th standard. And one of the questions that we're asking is, what travels faster? Is it the sound or the light? So in almost all urban schools, we found the right answer for the question that the light travels faster. We asked them, how do you say that? They said, that's because the teacher told us. Second set of children said that that's because that is what is written in the book. One of the unique experiences that we had in a government rural school, many children were not able to tell because they were never taught. But one child stood up, 4th standard child stood up, and he said, the sound travels faster than the light. So we were surprised. The teacher was very angry, though he has never taught him. So we asked him, what is your reason for saying so? So he said, when I start the TV at home, the sound starts first. And then comes the picture. Now in the 4th standard, he has no clue as to how the TV works. But he has actually applied a logic and he has actually formulated a response. Unfortunately, this child will get 0 marks and the urban children in the private schools will get 100 marks. That's our assessment system, which is more focused on what the child does not know than what the child knows and what is the thinking and logic behind that answer. We were doing a very large program in 7 districts of a state, covering about 9,300 schools. So we were assessing individual children in these schools, and for which we needed to recruit about 600 people. So we placed an ad, and about 6,000 people applied. Almost all of them were double graduates, and some of them were engineers, and given the unemployment seen in rural India, it was not surprising. So we put them through a test that comprised of understanding whether they know the 4th standard competencies, because that's what they were required to test. So one of the questions was, anything multiplied by 0 is how much? And 70% of them either did not answer or answered it wrongly. Some of them actually made it to the interview. So we asked them, what happened? Why did you not answer this at all, or why did you answer it wrongly? And we were told, we got 3 responses. These were 4th standard competencies. The first response that we got was that, oh, I am an arts person. Second was that time was not sufficient. Third is that I didn't understand the question. It was in local language. We actually realized the extent of rot in understanding basic subject matter at the double graduate level. And this actually shaped most of our thinking subsequently, all these experiences. Now, surveys after surveys, research after research has brought in the fact that the quality of education in India, especially the school education and also higher education, is abysmal. Almost 10% children in 10th standard are unable to read and write. About 33% of the children in 5th standard are unable to read and write. If you see the pyramid of children joining, 100 children join in the 1st standard, 52 reach the 5th standard, 46 reach the 8th standard, and 39 reach the 10th standard, out of which about 49% pass. So you have about 18 to 19 children passing out of this. And we spend $15 billion every year on this kind of a effective funnel or ineffective funnel. And that's the status of education in this country. The national policy for education, the national curricular framework, the constitutional reference to education and the kind of society that we want to be is fairly clear. The agenda is very well set. One was set in 1950, one was set in 1986. The curricular framework gets revised and also communicated, but 99% of the people in education are not aware of these documents. So what are the issues? After having worked for 12 years with the system very closely, because we worked with the government system, because that is where the children of parents who don't have a choice and don't have a voice study. Our children don't go there. We don't go to public systems. We don't go to public hospital. We don't stand in a queue for getting 1 kilo of sugar or kerosene. It is these 80%, 85% people whose income is less than $2 per day, they actually go there. So therefore, we decided to work with that system. Now, 3 points, 3 issues that we realize are the most critical. There are several issues. Education is a very complex subject. Society is a very complex subject, but there are 3 things that we actually felt were the most important. Number 1 is the political will to really contribute to education, have a vision for education for the whole country, and pursue that relentlessly without your political affiliation or without the kind of people that change does not exist. And it manifests in several ways. Number 1, you don't provide adequate budgets. we still are somewhere around 3 to 3.2% of our GDP being spent on education. And then if you consider the leakages in the system, it is not even that much. Second, is not a single elected representative actually fights or contests elections based on a promise that if I get elected, I will actually improve the quality of education in my constituency. I will ensure there are schools, there are toilets, there are drinking water, that there are teachers of an appropriate teacher-pupil ratio. Nobody does that. It is not on the agenda. It is only Bijli Sadak Pani. That is electricity, roads, and water. Even there, the progress is not much. But at least as a slogan, they use these three, but not education. At an individual level, every politician accepts that education is important. Second is accountability. Accountability for results and outcomes, like in other development sector, in education also does not exist in the bureaucracy. When I say 49% children pass, that means 51 children fail. 51% children fail. And that's a very large percentage failing year after year at the 10th standard level. But nobody is accountable. Nor the education minister, nor the education secretary, nor the district officer. It is finally only the children and probably their parents who are responsible for it, or responsible for it. Now that's not on. What are the reasons for lack of accountability? Political interference, uncertain tenures. In one of the states where we are operating, in the last 12 years, 14 education secretaries have changed. One large MOU that I signed in one of the northern states on 3rd August 2010, so far 4 secretaries have changed. What kind of vision, continuity, consistency can you expect in this kind of system, and therefore there is no accountability? Next reason for lack of accountability is the normal performance management and measurement system in the government does not exist. It's highly politicized. And therefore, under that excuse, there is no pressure on the bureaucracy to really perform. Next is that there is no risk-reward system. If you do something well, there is no recognition and reward. If you don't do anything, there is nothing at risk. So how do you expect this system to really deliver anything? Forget about education. Third is execution. All the intents, as you have seen, the policy intent, the documents are absolutely fine. If we really implement what we have resolved to do, our country will be a very different country. However, execution is the biggest nemesis of all these issues. So therefore, what is the issue with execution? Number one is that people are appointed for that role without having competence for that role. Number two is the basic enabling system, supporting system within that system does not exist. Number three is there is no risk-reward system, there is no measurement, and therefore there's no motivation for people to really do anything. So these are the three issues. So therefore, what do we need to do? If we have to dramatically improve our education system, what do we need to do? Number one is that we must commit much large financial resources for education in this country. If we want to be truly a developed nation and gain our pride of a country that once upon a time, I don't know when, but once upon a time used to create, or a knowledge creator, and gave knowledge to this entire world, how do we really attain that position? And therefore, we must invest in that. It's not a question of just percentage. It's not being technical about it. If something is required to be done for the next 10 years, do it. It will pay for itself. Number two is that the final crucible of learning and final crucible of quality of education is in the classroom. And the teacher is a major influencer of that process. And how do we create our teachers today? By 10 months of training, so-called training, in very poor institutions after just graduation. How do you expect any person to become a good teacher? In today's situation, the kind of socio-economic diversity that exists in the classroom, especially in the government rural school, even if Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, and Gautam Buddha were rolled into one teacher and were to deal with these children, it is impossible, it is difficult. And you expect a graduate to become a good teacher to deal with these situations in just 10 months? It's not possible. So our very strong recommendation to the government has been that we must have a solid 5-year program after 12th standard. What makes children learn better? That is number two. Number three is that research after research has established that it is the school leadership, the principal of a school, who can make or break a school. This is like any other leader. And the school leader has 3 responsibilities: academic leadership, administrative leadership, and the leadership in the community and the parent relationship. Especially in a village, it is very important. So how do you really train these people? So we must have a proper qualification. Today, any teacher, after having spent X number of years, becomes a head teacher. No inputs whatsoever in that person. Number 3 is the assessment and examination system. We have done research in 5 states, examining last 10 years question papers for the 10th standard, and we were surprised. We were not really surprised, we were expecting that 80% of the questions related to retrieval of knowledge. 80% of the questions. That is rote memorization. 5% questions had something to do with application of knowledge. Another 5% had skills orientation. And the balance had no relationship. So what happened to all the objectives of the national policy for education? And what happened to scientific temper, the sensitivity, refined the whole issue of acculturation, the issue of empathy? How does it get tested? And these are important objectives for education. So the examinations have to be recast to ensure that they actually assess whether the curricular objectives have been achieved or not achieved. Second aspect of examinations, they only have a common end line for all the children. When the starting line is different, based on my parental background, my parental literacy, my socio-economic status, my choice in terms of Howard Gardner's multiple intelligence, how do you measure me with the same yardstick? And it's very unfair. The issue of preschool, for example, in the rural areas there is nothing called preschool. So you start a rural child on a disadvantage as opposed to the urban child. So there is a major equity issue there. So there are several other issues, but I am not covering them at this stage. So what are we trying to do in this? Azim Premji Foundation is committed to making a solid long-term contribution at a systemic level. It is not enough to actually create islands of excellence. It is absolutely important to ensure that the system works. There is a full chapter in the National Policy for Education which talks about how to make the system work. So that is our entire effort. Now there are 4 areas which we have identified for our work, and we are working in that area. Number 1 is that the education professionals or the talent does not exist in education. So we are creating talent through Azim Premji University. The knowledge to solve our indigenous problems in this country does not exist, so we are actually promoting world-class research centers. The issue of capacity building of existing 7 million people to support 1.3 million, 1.4 million schools, that has to be addressed. So we are establishing district institutes in every district of this country and every state capital in this country, to just work with the government system to support them. And the last one is to create social pressures. Through these district institutes, through starting of schools, which are demonstration schools, to say that good quality education is possible in the government conditions. Not by starting some elite school, but in government conditions. We are starting 2 schools per district. We are also establishing an Institute of Assessment and Accreditation, which will create quality awareness at an institutional level for the whole country. We understand the job is very complex.
Is it fine? Should I
So Premji has, all this is possible because he has decided to support this in a big way. But we are also aware that many people need to actually do this. Thousands of universities are required, and all of us need to actually proceed in this direction. Otherwise, we'll never become a developed nation. We'll continue to be a developing nation. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.